What's going on, y'all? So we have some interesting potential happenings this year in the PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo world. Well, first and foremost, who's doing the most and more for gaming would be Microsoft at the moment, and we know Nintendo coming around the corner too, big time as well. What do I mean by this? Well, according to some articles, we're gonna get to that other one in a second. Microsoft Flight Simulator and Master Chief Collection coming to the PS5 and Switch 2 as well. So this means that Microsoft, if they do this, they're looking to be one of the top publishers again this year and dominate Sony. They are looking to do very well because if we look at what Game Pass has this year, oh man, what's going on potentially with the Xbox handheld and the OEM models? Yeah, they're looking to do a lot more for Sony this year. While Sony, I almost said phony, while Sony was focused big time on the mid-gen upgrade, Microsoft had bigger plans in store. So they could be having the OEM models, the handheld, Master Chief Collection, and an amazing first party and Game Pass service this year. And things are looking very good for them. So we have some intel too from Nate Drake here, who's saying this is going to happen. We're going to hold him to this and see what happens this year. Because if this is not true, then he's going to be dealing with a lot of stuff because he has two aspects here. Because over here on the other side too, we have Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth coming to Xbox One, coming to Xbox and Switch 2, which we know that's going to be happening because Square already made that very clear. So that's not something that we need to believe. But Halo, Master Chief Collection, I think that would be a good start because then that means that they would start people on the older Halos before you got to Infinite and all the other games. So I believe that would be the right path. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say here. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into this.
Like outside of the ones we already know about, like Doom, Dark Ages, The Outer Worlds 2, I suspect Oblivion is a multi-platform game. There's just no reason to doubt that.
Oblivion as well.
So games that I have heard will be released multi-platform in 2025 beyond the obvious include Flight Simulator will come to PlayStation 5 and Switch 2.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Halo, the Master Chief Collection will be coming to PS5 and Switch 2 as well.
Now you know why Phil Spencer said there's no red lines.
Yeah, I mean, I would also go as far to say that if a Gears of War collection exists and releases in 2025, I would say that would likely be a day one release on PlayStation 5 as well.
Interesting.
Yep.
Microsoft is just going to fully embrace that. I'd say any game coming out this year will at some point find its way to PS5 and or Switch 2. It's just going to be a question of when. It could be 6 months later, it could be 12 months later, but I think at some point, anything coming out this year will find its way to other systems. Microsoft is going to be a very big supporter of the Switch 2 when it does come out. They will be porting and patching the current Switch lineup. So games like Grounded and Pentiment, the Ori games will eventually find their way to Switch 2, be patched with 4K support. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Sea of Thieves, maybe Hi-Fi Rush also find their way over. Just expect a lot of Microsoft games on Switch 2 and PS5 moving forward.
So yeah, we kind of knew that Microsoft was going to do that eventually, but are they going to be day one for Gears E-Day, like with PC? We don't know, but we know eventually they will come over. Now, getting back to the Master Chief Collection, that will be huge because that community has been alive forever on PC and Xbox, and it's just has that evergreen, formula. So I could see that happening for them joining in, on the Switch, on the PlayStation, and joining in on that crossplay. And the PlayStation base always wanted to play Halo, and there's some people that have only been on PlayStation for the longest, and PlayStation and Nintendo for the longest, and they don't even have PCs, and this will be their first time getting into the Halo series. They'll be able to go through all the campaigns, all the content, all at the same time, go through multiple Halo games, and enjoy it for what it is at the higher quality. And for the people who are growing up on those consoles now, they weren't alive in those times, will be able to do that. So I can see that happening, and then Microsoft will increase the sales and stats of that, get millions of sales on that, millions of sales on Gears across multiple platforms too, the Gears of War Collection Remake and the Gears of War E-Day. Microsoft Flight Simulator will do solid. That's a cool game. That's not for everybody. It's a niche audience. And with Microsoft doing all of that, just so much they got coming out this year with Game Pass service too, they're going to have a massive 2025, and they're looking to beat Sony for the third year when it comes to first party and service. Because PlayStation has been disappointing first party wise. Now, if we want to talk about locked games, yeah, but that's just locking your games there. It's not the same as producing something and putting things on other platforms. Microsoft has been putting games on PlayStation, you know what I mean? If you look at Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, what does Sony put on there? And then you see these PlayStation ponies talk a lot of mess about the Xbox. But the thing is like, you're playing a lot of things that Microsoft has given you. But what is Sony doing for the other gaming communities? This is where they have to step in and they don't have a choice. And it's not like it's going to be hurting you. You're getting more sales. Communities are growing more. It's not bad. No, do that. Drop your ego, and they're going to do it anyways. But one thing we do know for sure is that the Switch 2 will be getting a lot of ports and be getting a lot of, like, games from both PlayStation and Xbox. The Switch 2. It's going to be loaded with stuff. And this will be like having those experiences on the go. You know what I mean? Now, if you'll see my recent video, but they're going to be having DLSS and machine learning on the Switch and cloud services. So expect Nintendo to be able to take shortcuts and be getting the most third-party support Nintendo has ever had. So that's going to be happening. Now, moving on to the next segment, and we'll get back to some things, is seeing here, well, we already seen that, is seeing here him saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are coming to Xbox and Switch too. That Remake are coming to Switch and Xbox this year, and then next year Rebirth is coming to Switch and Xbox. We can see that right here on this.
But I can confirm that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will be coming to Xbox. Final Fantasy VII Remake will be released in 2025. Rebirth will follow in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
These games will also be coming to Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, Square Enix has been out there very publicly talking about, hey, we can't do exclusives anymore.
Yeah.
We want to put our games in everywhere. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's sort of this sort of thing was kind of to be expected. I mean, I don't know about them announcing them during the developer direct, because that's kind of a big move, because if you look at like the franchises that Xbox fans have been asking for to come back to the platform, it's really the Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy 16 and 7 Remake and Rebirth.
That's going to be coming too. Trust me.
if that's what you're doing, you're basically being like, yeah, we know, we've heard you, these are coming, and then here's a release date for Doom, South of Midnight and stuff. I mean, that's a pretty damn solid Dev Direct. You're gonna make a lot of people happy, a lot of people angry too, because for some weird reason there are a lot of people out there that don't want to think about the idea of Final Fantasy not being PlayStation exclusive,
which is absolutely stupid, because what do they have to do with the development of it? It actually started with Nintendo. Nintendo published the first Final Fantasy and helped them get it going in the world, sold millions of copies on Super Nintendo. It was very successful. Then they kind of, I would say, betrayed them a bit with Sony, because they wanted to be the superstars on PlayStation 1, which they did. And they felt like the Nintendo games just get way too much, like, just feed, and it's hard to compete with them. And they wanted to highlight themselves elsewhere with Sony. But it's like, when I tell people, what does Sony have to do with the development of Final Fantasy? Nothing. Square published and developed that. They're not, Final Fantasy developers. They just wanted to lock the game there. And Square went along with it, and it did work for the time that it did, but it doesn't work anymore. So it's not necessarily thinking that way because it's not their IP. It's not their in-house. It's different when you're putting your in-house somewhere and people get a little bit upset. I was like, okay, I can understand, because they're losing maybe, it's all ego, but they're losing, that power in the PlayStation world, and the brand is not as strong because they can't keep their in-house there. But Final Fantasy was never PlayStation in-house. It started off with Nintendo and Square. So we just need to look at like the facts here. You know what I mean? And it going back to Nintendo is not, anything new. Actually, the older games been on there. So are the other older Final Fantasy games. So they're just trying to lock the new ones there. You know what I mean? It's just people having nostalgia of playing it on that device. But once again, it was supposed to be on Nintendo 64 actually. So it ended up being on PS1 to let people know about that. But all in all, regardless of all that, it's happening anyways, and it's about making the most profit, expanding your audience at the biggest threshold that you can, and continuing to make more games, which is what we want, and that's what it takes now. And that's the way that the industry is moving forward now. It's all about how much more sales can you get on all these devices. It's not about locking things anywhere. The only people that can do that first party are Nintendo because they're that good, and they've always been doing that since the beginning. Sony has not, you know? So Microsoft is doing the right thing and fully embracing that. Now it's time for Sony to do it because they realize and see the results. You don't want your communities to die and you don't want lesser sales, so do it, right? Definitely, if you're still selling fine, there's no reason not to do it. So that's kind of the future now. The real competition now is coming into who's going to have the most publishing limelight. Who's going to get the most first party sales? You see people trying to follow Nintendo now. But in order to do it, they have to put their games all over, right? Otherwise, they can't do it like you could back in days. Those days are over with. Only Nintendo can do that now. And that's just something we have to be honest with. And Microsoft has one of the best routes because they're allowing you to do that on Game Pass. So even though they're putting their games on the PlayStation community, it would still be good to own either a PC or an Xbox just for the fact that you could still play them on Game Pass. And that's the awesome part. Even if you are getting them on PlayStation, you have a PC, right? Because people say they do the PlayStation PC Nintendo route. Well, on your PC, you would still be able to play them at higher settings if you have a better PC than the PlayStation. So either way, they're allowing you to get the experience in many dimensions, and that's where you have to give them credit for it. They have very good ideas, and we can't knock that, and we have to give credit where credit's due. Whereas, like I've said in many of my videos before, the PlayStation base is just not intellectually honest. They're intellectually dishonest, and they want to only tear down and say something negative towards the Xbox community. And I told people the reason why I'm slamming the ponies is just because of that, because they're being intellectually dishonest, and there's a big imbalance in the gaming industry for 2 generations with that. The Nintendo community is fine. The Xbox community is more humble compared to what it used to be in the 360 days. The PC community, they're like that, but they're not being intellectually dishonest and ignorant and stupid. But toxicity, yeah, I mean that exists across all three, and lesser on the Nintendo world. Um, and then also like some of the things that Sony does, like if you were just only in the Pony world or in the Sony world, all they do is say only positive things and just pay and support. They're not going to get any better if you don't do that. That's why it's good to see the Switch 2 come in and dominate like it's going to do. Saw what the Switch 1 did, how it dominated PlayStation. Sales were out of this damn world, winning every single like NPD, winning worldwide for like 5, 6 straight years, dominating. Switch 2 is going to do the same thing again. It's good because that makes the competition better and it makes Sony want to get better. And then that Microsoft saw that they wanted to improve their first party, and then now Sony wants to improve their first party even more too. And then now we see people being more in-house, and that's better because you just don't want to be a third-party vampire the rest of your gaming career. It's not going to work anymore. Because in the future, it's going to be like you turn on your TV or you have this device, and here goes the PlayStation service, here goes the Xbox service, here goes the Nintendo service. Technology differences are gone. Now it's how good is your publishing and developing. Consoles are gone eventually, right? They may still be there to an extent, maybe, but you guys get what I'm saying. That's the future. And here's the cloud. You could play everything on max settings, no problem, and play it smooth, and you don't need that. Look at the NVIDIA GeForce. That's an example, like already. Look at the Xbox Cloud. That's a good example. Look at what Nintendo was doing with the cloud on the Switch in Japan. Guys, that's the future. So it is about in-house publishing and development, not just selling hardware. That's an outdated spectrum. And it's only going to work so much now for you because they're not going to make their money off of that. Consoles sell at a loss. Unless you're Nintendo. It's always been that way. But there we have it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think. I think Halo coming to the other consoles and Final Fantasy is actually cool. And I think that that's a very, very grounded reality that we can believe in. All right, y'all. Peace.